So when I was a little kid, I loved birthdays, just like every kid, right? I looked forward to a special birthday cake, possibly, my name scribbled in icing and my presents brightly wrapped in wrapping paper. So my parents had 7 kids, though, right? So for our birthdays, there were no ponies or bounce houses. For our birthdays at my home, our parents let us choose from 2 options. We got to choose either we could have a family birthday party where we got, our parents and our siblings and maybe a few balloons, or we could just go out to eat with our parents. So back in the 80s, going out to eat at a restaurant, that was a really big deal. So when you have 7 kids living on the salary of one electrical engineer that works for the government, you don't spend $12 for a plate at Applebee's. You buy $12 worth of ground beef at the grocery store, grow your own tomatoes, and grill those puppies on the charcoal grill to feed the entire family. So eating out at a restaurant, that was a rare event. But also, I love the attention of just going out to eat with just my parents and the siblings around. So when April rolled around and I was about to turn 9, my mom asked me which option I wanted, and I chose eating out with my parents. Embarrassingly, I was excited to try the new Hardee's restaurant that just been built around the corner. I definitely craved the attention of my parents. As an adult, I realized I was probably looking for connection. However, at this particular birthday dinner, I remember being pretty disappointed. See, at the time, my parents were struggling with an older, rebellious teenage sister of mine, and I quickly realized that this birthday dinner was going to be taken hostage by discussions about how to keep my sister Elaine from shoving siblings out of the second story window again. So I didn't get the connection I was hoping for at this birthday dinner, but I learned a lifetime lesson. I learned that relationships take work to build. And if we aren't intentional, important moments can and will easily slip away through our fingers. And as an adult, I've been on this quest to find ways to improve my relationships with my loved ones. And one simple technique I was taught to me by my friend, Tara, she taught me the skill to improve relationships. She said, when in doubt, validate. She goes, if you're not sure what to say to a loved one that's sobbing in despair, validate. If you aren't sure how to calm down an angry child, just validate. If you can't find words to respond to a friend that just shared their biggest, darkest secret, just validate. When in doubt, she said, validate, validate, validate. So when I first heard that word, I thought about when I went to San Francisco, the Cheesecake Factory down in San Francisco, and the server asked if they could validate our parking. And I was like, why the fancy word? Just pay for my stupid, expensive $50 parking fee, right? So validation in relationships is also just a fancy word for I see you, I hear you, your feelings are valid. I have the space to help you hold those emotions. It has nothing to do with rescuing or giving advice or condoning any behavior. It's not judging, it's simply support. So Christ said to mourn with those that mourn. I thought, isn't that the same thing as validation? I remember when Jesus wept with Mary and Martha right before he raised Lazarus from the dead. He knew that Lazarus was going to live again and soon, right? There was no need for him to weep and cry. He could have just told them what was about to become, but Christ knew that power and validation. So he put aside his own feelings, he put aside his own plans and his agenda, and he simply mourned with his friend. One of the first times I tried intentionally using the validation in tough situation, I was at school. So I teach second grade, and our class we were decorating these Valentine's bags for a Valentine card exchange. Now I had one student, let's say her name was Rachel. She was absent that day when we were decorating the bags. Now, this girl, Rachel, throughout the year, she had a tendency to have these meltdowns if she didn't get things didn't go her way or she missed out on something. So to avoid another scene, being, this amazing teacher I am, I thought ahead, right? I was proud of myself for planning ahead. I decided, well, we'd make a cool bag for her so when she came the next day, she wouldn't feel like she missed out. So we decorated this amazing bag. I mean, we put beautiful sparkly hearts on it. We had a perfectly hand-drawn purple cat on this bag because every second grader likes cats. It's the thing. So when Rachel came to school the following day, she saw her bag was already decorated. Instead of being grateful, like I thought she should be, she was fired up. She stomped her feet. I thought she might break an ankle. She started crying and sobbing that she hated cats and how dare we draw a cat on her Valentine bag. She threw the most ridiculous tantrum. It was loud. And it wasn't the first one we'd seen. And I knew from experience that this rage was going to last all day long. This Spitfire 7-year-old was taking away precious class time. And I was supposed to be teaching and introducing the concept of adverbs. I had spent hours prepping this lesson plan where Cupid was going to catch these flying adverb hearts. And now I was getting angry that she was affecting the learning of 22 other kids in the class. But then in the back of my head, I remembered that word that Kara had taught me, validate, just validate. You guys, embarrassingly, this is one of the hardest moments of my life because frankly, I didn't have time to validate. I didn't want to validate. I didn't have the energy to validate. And I had 22 other kids watching this entire interaction. And didn't I need to show my authority in the situation to show them that I was in charge? But I heard my friend say, trust the process and validate. In the back of my head, I heard her say that. So I bit my tongue and said some of the hardest words of my life. And I said, Rachel, tell me more. I heard her ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous complaints. I didn't agree with her, but I responded with just simple validating statements like, Rachel, that must have been hard for you to walk in and see a cat of all things on your Valentine bag. She continued her obnoxiously long rant, and I only replied, yes, I can see how that would be really frustrating. She kept going. I said, what I'm hearing you say is that you wish we hadn't drawn a cat on your bag. Is that right? And she stomped and was shaking. Her face was getting red. 22 other 7-year-olds were watching this disaster. I was desperately hoping that the principal wouldn't walk in at this exact moment until suddenly she stopped. I never stopped her. I let her say everything. I let her say it all. I only validated her feelings without any judgment. Well, that she knew of. I was a newbie at this, so I was fully judging her in my head. I was new at it. I never apologized or condoned her behavior. I just listened and I validated. I was trusting the process, and this is what happened. Her demeanor changed. Her features softened. Rachel looked at me and quietly said, oh, wait, the clock probably just thought I liked cats, huh? I simply nodded, and she smiled. The rage was gone. Her red cheeks vanished, and she said, well, that's okay. I hate cats, actually, but I do like lions. I'll just pretend it's a lion. Is it okay if I give it a name? So I've had this student in my class for more than 5 months, and she had never gotten over one of her meltdowns this quickly before. Her rage had always lingered the entire day. But I'd also never had the courage to implement this simple, validating strategy. Never underestimate the power of being heard and being seen. This experience taught me that if I want to improve a relationship, I can practice my validation skills. That one trait alone can build up a relationship and create unimaginable trust and safety. Elder Uchtdorf said, do all things that lie in your power, and then stand still. See God's arm revealed, and I promise that the Lord will cause unimaginable things to come from your righteous labor. As I continue to practice this skill, I continue to get better, and I continue to have unimaginable outcomes. But then one day, I texted my friend Ashley and I said, I can't do it. I know validation works, but I feel empty or something, and I can't do it today. I'd had 4 hours of sleep. My mom was dying. My daughter was failing classes. I was overwhelmed. And that's when Ashley taught me the word boundaries. She had asked me if I heard of them. And I said, well, yeah, I have 5 kids. I know about boundaries. So I told her about this time I used boundaries to save my toddler's life. So my oldest had just turned 2. He was crazy. He was a crazy toddler. And I'd go to the store. I just had my second baby. My husband had just gone back to work, and I needed something from the pharmacy. I was outnumbered. I'd never done 2 kids at the store by myself, and I thought I could do it. So I stuck my baby, Lexi, in her infant car seat, and we headed out. When I got to the store, I put the baby car seat right into the shopping cart. Put the 2-year-old son right in the shopping cart. He was restrained in the cart, right? I knew I could be in and out in 5 minutes and be safe. My plan was I was going to push that car directly to my vehicle and move the toddler and the infant straight into the vehicle, and no problem. He'd always be restrained, that there'd be no craziness in public, right? So I get to the automatic doors, and that's when I noticed that evil pole that they had attached to that shopping cart that apparently they used to keep people from stealing shopping carts, and it was going to prevent me from taking that cart out of the door, and I was going to have to let the toddler out of the cart. I quickly convinced myself I could do this, right? I was a strong, independent woman. I could do it. I could handle 2 kids on my own. So I parked the cart, grabbed my diaper bag, prescription, and the baby, and I pulled my toddler out with one hand. I said, Brig, you have to stay right by me so we can get safely to the car. But right as we reached those automatic doors, he slipped his hand out of mine and took off. Toddlers are freakishly fast. I'm just warning anyone, if you haven't had a toddler yet, it suggests a certain training regimen to prepare for that event. So I had this heavy infant car seat. my diaper bag in the other. I was recovering from childbirth, and now my 2-year-old was running straight for a busy parking lot where a car was coming. It was an impossible situation. So I didn't think I could set the baby down to chase the kid. So without really even thinking about what I was doing purely on instincts, I swung my diaper bag like a cowgirl and hoping it would aim close enough. And bullseye, it landed right in front of him, knocked him down just long enough for me to awkwardly jog up and catch up to him. So I set a physical boundary with my toddler that kept him safe. That diaper bag helped me implement a boundary. I'm not suggesting this to anyone, by the way. Although I did get some chuckles from about this story to my friend Ashley, she was able to clarify that she was thinking of a different kind of boundary. Boundaries for ourselves are different than rules and restraints for our kids. True boundaries are not about controlling anyone else, like was necessary for me to save my toddler from getting run over at the pharmacy, but boundaries are about providing ourselves with safety, health, and comfort. And that in turn allows us the capacity to validate others because we've given ourselves the space that we need. So Ashley taught me that day that if I'm really struggling to fill my own reservoir, then I simply can't give validation to others. However, if I learn to implement boundaries, then I will have that strength to continue giving. We can't do all the things and ignore ourselves. Validation is a gift we can give to somebody else to improve our relationship. Boundaries is a gift we give to ourselves that also can improve our relationship. Now, just a warning, in my experience, boundaries in relationships are super hard to navigate because the point is not to control anyone else. The point is to recognize in ourselves what our own personal limits are and protect those limits. And in turn, our own emotional and mental resources will be replenished. So a boundary with a friend might sound like, I'm working on remembering that your feelings aren't my responsibility while also trying to be a good friend. I hope it works out for me to go to lunch with you next time. Thanks for understanding. A boundary with a boss might look like turning off all your email notifications so that work stress is contained to only work hours. A boundary with a spouse might sound like, I love you. I love our time together. As an introvert, I also need alone time to recharge. I need at least 30 minutes of space every day to offer our family my best self. A boundary with an overbearing parent might sound like, thank you for your concern. I love you. I really appreciate your feedback. Please wait to give that feedback until I ask for it. I'd like to figure some things out myself, no matter how messy it is. A boundary for your exhausted self might sound like, I'm going to commit myself to a healthy sleep routine. A boundary with a church leader might be, thanks for thinking of me, but I'm just not capable of that role right now. Boundaries are hard, especially at first. However, I try to remember that my needs are worth that temporary discomfort. Brene Brown motivated me when she wrote, daring to set boundaries is about having the courage to love ourselves, even when we risk disappointing others. Elder Holland talks about boundaries when he says, for those of you who want to bear another's burden, it is important that you refortify yourself and build yourself back up when others expect so much of you. And indeed, they take so much out of you. So I love to imagine when Christ was out at sea with his disciples. Remember, there's a big storm, and Jesus chose to sleep. The storm is so bad that the disciples think they might not even survive this trip. However, Christ needed sleep, and so he did. Caregivers need care also. So you have to have fuel in the tank before you can give it to others. So I may not have had much connection with my parents at my 9th birthday at Hardee's, but I learned an invaluable lesson from those uncomfortable feelings. Sometimes it takes some discomfort in order to build the strongest and best relationships. Christ taught that the gospel is based on how we are able to love God and to love others. As we strive to build stronger relationships and experiment with some validation and boundary setting, I'm confident that the reward will be unimaginable connections with others. After all, relationships are the basis of the gospel of Jesus Christ. I say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.